The envelope had no stamp, no postmark, no return address. It simply rested in the center of Claire Bennett's kitchen table when she returned home from signing her divorce papers. She stared at it. Cream-colored, yellowed with age. Her name, Claire, was written across the front in elegant cursive she hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. Her grandmother's handwriting. Claire's breath caught. That's impossible. Her grandmother, Evelyn, had passed away when Claire was only 12 years old. Hands trembling, she carefully opened the brittle envelope. Inside was a single letter. The paper smelled faintly of lavender. The first line made her knees weak. "My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, then life has broken your heart." Claire lowered the letter. No one knew what had happened that day except her lawyer. She had told no friends, no family, no one. Slowly, she continued reading. "You may believe you've failed. You haven't. You're simply standing at the end of a chapter you never imagined would close." Tears blurred the ink. Only hours earlier, Claire had whispered those exact words to herself. "I've failed." She looked around the empty kitchen. The silence suddenly felt different, as though someone was sitting beside her. The letter continued. "One day you'll wonder if loving someone was a mistake because of how it ended. It wasn't. Love is never wasted, only misplaced." Claire covered her mouth. Daniel had walked away after 15 years of marriage. There had been no affair, no dramatic betrayal, just two people who slowly became strangers. The quietness of it somehow hurt more than anger ever could. She turned the page. "I know you're asking yourself if you're too old to begin again." Claire stopped breathing. At 46, she'd repeated that question all week. Her grandmother answered it decades before she'd ever asked. The answer is no. The flowers that bloom latest are often the ones people remember longest. Memories flooded back. Summer afternoons baking peach pies, her grandmother humming while tending roses, always smiling, always patient, always seeming to know exactly what people needed before they spoke. Claire smiled through tears. "You knew me so well." Near the bottom of the page, Evelyn's handwriting became smaller. "You're probably sitting at your kitchen table right now." Claire looked around in disbelief. The old oak table, the same one she'd inherited from her grandmother years earlier. Her coffee mug sat exactly where the letter said it would. "There is a crack near your right hand." Claire slowly touched the small crack in the wood. She'd never noticed it before. Her heartbeat quickened. How could someone write this 30 years earlier? The next paragraph made her heart ache. "You're wondering how I could possibly know these things. The truth is, I don't." Claire frowned, then smiled as she continued. "I simply know life. Every woman eventually believes she's too broken, too tired, too old, or too afraid to begin again. I wrote this for whichever version of you needed me most." Claire laughed softly through her tears. It wasn't magic. It was wisdom. Her grandmother hadn't predicted the future. She understood the human heart. One final envelope slipped from behind the letter. Inside was a small brass key. Attached to it was another note. "For the blue box in my attic." Claire stared. "My parents cleaned out the attic years ago." Or so she thought. The next morning, she drove to the old farmhouse her parents had recently decided to sell. The attic was nearly empty. Except, in the far corner sat a dusty blue wooden box. The tiny brass key fit perfectly. Inside were dozens of letters, each addressed to someone different. Claire's brother, her mother, her grandfather, old neighbors, friends. Every envelope carried only a first name. At the bottom of the box rested another note. "If you're the one opening this, then you're exactly where you're supposed to be." For the next 6 months, Claire delivered every letter by hand. One reached a widower who had just lost his wife. Another comforted her brother after losing his job. One inspired a teenage cousin to pursue college despite overwhelming doubt. Each letter arrived precisely when it was needed most. No one could explain the timing. No one tried. Years later, Claire became known in her town as someone who always seemed to know the right words. She volunteered at hospitals. She mentored young mothers. She wrote encouraging notes to people facing difficult seasons of life. One rainy afternoon, her granddaughter watched her seal an envelope. "Who is that for?" Claire smiled. "I don't know yet." The light girl looked confused. "You don't know?" Claire shook her head. "Sometimes love arrives exactly when it's needed." She carefully wrote only one thing on the front: "For the day your heart needs this most." She tucked the letter into a cedar chest alongside dozens of others, not because she could see the future, but because she had learned the greatest lesson her grandmother had ever taught her. The right words are timeless. A letter written with enough love doesn't belong to yesterday or tomorrow. It belongs to the moment someone finally needs to read it. And somewhere, years from now, another woman would open an aging envelope at precisely the right moment and discover that hope has a remarkable way of arriving exactly on time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.